Welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where we interview entertainment pros about their careers and how they became successful in the industry. The secrets to their success here every week. Here's your host, Sean Ventura.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast. I'm your host, Sean Ventura, and I just want to say subscribe on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you are, and tell your friends and share the episodes on social media. Okay, thanks. Our guest today is my good buddy, Bill Baker. He is a video editor, producer, motion designer, has his own business. He's an all-around great guy. This is going to be fun. Okay, here we go. Hey everybody, we're here with Bill Baker. He's a good friend of mine. We used to hang out years and years ago when he worked at Turner Studios. He is a producer and editor out of Massachusetts. Thanks for doing this, Bill. This is awesome.
Oh man, yeah, I'm still looking forward to this. It's been a long time, Sean.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we talked, and you've had like a long and varied career of doing different stuff for CNN and the Braves. We'll get into all that, and Turner. Now you got your own thing, your own business. So we'll just talk about it. But let me just ask you first, how did you know that you wanted to work in the film and TV industry? How old were you?
Actually it was in college. Growing up, I was way into airplanes and aeronautics, and I wanted to fly. I wanted to design and make airplanes, more than the normal kid with a paper airplane would do. But I ended up going to college for aeronautical engineering. And after finishing up that at Embry-Riddle in Florida, I went back to New Hampshire where I grew up and said, my infinite wisdom at 21, I don't want to work yet. And decided to go back to college, like continue ed. And I went to Keene State College in Keene, New Hampshire, and stumbled around some classes like computer math, safety. And then I found my way into a broadcast journalism class. And it was so cool. It was just the class environment was so free. And it was the first professor I ever had or teacher that we always called by our first name, Rose Gondanis. And it was just like a put your feet up, relax, learn something about broadcast. And it was this general class. It wasn't specific. It wasn't an editing class. It wasn't a directing class. It was all of it. And so we produced weekly TV features for the college, or a TV news broadcast, like 30-minute broadcasts. Okay. And every week we had a role. Okay, Bill, this week you're a director. Next week you're the shooter for this piece. You're the writer for the news broadcast. This kind of stuff. And so you learned it all. And it was just a lot of, and it got me going. Otherwise, I started spidering out. I was doing radio. I was doing radio news. I had my own college radio station, or a show. I wrote for the Keene State Equinox. Mostly sports because I've been around sports a lot. So and so I just kept kind of going down that hole of broadcast, or journalism specifically, into broadcast. And like I said, it was just a lot of fun to learn to do all this stuff. And it was hands-on too. I learned a lot more by doing things. Right. And so in those classes, you grabbing a camera, you going out and doing things. And we did a lot in the class. I mean, there was in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a very political state. So during the the primaries, whatever else, every candidate's there. And at one point when Bill Clinton was coming through town, he was speaking at a local company. And I thought it was cool. I was going to go there. I was going to be in the camera pool, the news feed. And I shot him doing this. And as we're going back to the college, we hear word that he's deciding to go up to, this typical New England town, downtown street, and shake some hands. Okay. And so we're like, we got to go. And we're not in the press pool. We're not in the press pool at all. So we race down there, and there's crowds of people up and down Main Street. I mean, he was really popular at this time. And we squeeze through the crowd, and we get into the motorcade. So basically, we're standing in front of these moving limousines and Clinton shaking hands. And this is back in the day of those old, like 3/4-inch decks that wrapped around your shoulder and a camera attached to it. Remember those heavy things? And we start shooting him, and all of a sudden, like 5 or 6 Secret Service come out of nowhere and pick me up and my producer and lead us out and put us down. And because we didn't have the credentials to be there. Right. And then I look at Mike, the producer. I was like, yeah, let's go back. We got back in, and right away he grabs Dee Dee Myers at the time, and we're doing our interview with her in front of these limousines, moving. And then it was Stephanopoulos. We did an interview with him, and then as we're shooting Clinton, he turns. I'm like over the shoulder of him, shaking hands. He turns, comes right at me, And again, I'm picked up and moved out of the way. And it was just footage that it got so many miles out of for any kind of college package, or even I think some of the local news used it as well. It was really cool. But I mean, that kind of stuff is what really got me hooked into it, you know?
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where do you go from there? You graduate college and then you go over to CNN, or is there something happening in between there?
Yeah. So at like my last year of college, I started taking on some jobs on the side. There was a company in Vermont that put together these ad reels for the local cable companies. And basically it was me sitting in front of an editing deck, recording like computer tones on one audio channel and then the sound for the ads on the other channel. You know, it's like those local commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was doing those on Saturdays, boring, but it got me in the door of this place, who also ended up started doing these 5-minute headline news, community news kind of thing. So on CNN headline news, the last 5 minutes of each 30-minute block on local cable was our news feed.
Oh, I
so
didn't know
a
that.
5-minute
Okay.
news broadcast. Yeah, I don't know how many news. I don't know how many people actually watched it, but that got me more out there. So I was the local sports guy, and even though you never saw me on camera, which is a very good thing, I hated being on camera. I was out there covering like local men's softball game, you know, B-roll of a game, and using like an Amiga 3000 to edit it together, and using the gymnast wipe, because you know when you're that young, you're using every effect you can find.
Right,
like,
right.
Look at this,
The gymnast wipe.
the gymnast wipe, yeah. And then with and around that time too, as graduation was coming, I was sending resumes everywhere because I didn't know where I was going to go.
Right.
I knew I wanted to work for WCVB out of Boston. They were like the best local news in the country, I thought. But then I was sending to Discover. I sent a resume to NASA TV. I sent resumes everywhere, including CNN.
Right.
And I think with the help of my professor Rose, I got a phone call from CNN, and which was mind-boggling because I mean I know they get hundreds of resumes.
Yeah.
You know all those big networks do. And I got a phone call, and over a second phone call, they hired me. They said, "Can you be here in 2 weeks?"
Wow.
And I was like, "Holy cow!" You know, here I am coming from New Hampshire, going to Atlanta. Never been to Atlanta, except for stopping at a bus station once on the way through.
Mm-hmm.
But never been there, so I was going down there blind, and including finding a place to live over a phone.
And you're single at this point because you're married with kids now. Okay.
Yeah, I'm single. I was 24.
Okay.
24, yeah. And, you know, this is after a long college career. And, so I picked up, moved in 2 weeks, moved down to Atlanta, and they hired me on as a video journalist, which is the entry level production. It was you go in either as technical or as like a writer.
Right.
And I wanted to go to the technical route. And at this point, I was thinking, I want to be a director at CNN. I really want to be a director. And as I got in there, you know, the VJ job was ripping scripts, running teleprompter, floor directing, you know, a lot of that stuff. And you moved around between international and domestic and stuff. And then as I talked more and more to the people there, I realized they were like, listen, it takes at least 15 years to become a director. I'm like, okay, that takes too long.
Wow.
What about editing?
Yeah. What else?
And I get antsy after a few years. I want to start doing different things, you know? And but the environment at a place like CNN is really cool for a techie like myself because it's just so involved. You know, I was there during the O.J. Simpson trial, during the Bosnian War, during, you know, elections, that kind of thing. And
working lots of hours too. Yeah.
Not just working lots of hours, but spending lots of hours there at CNN. So they're highly encouraged you to learn more than just ripping scripts. Like, where do you want to go? You know, go learn that from the editors, go learn from whoever else. And so I spent a lot of late nights sitting with the editors. Okay. And just kind of learning how they do. You know, again, this is 94, 95. And so because of that extra time, it only took me 3 months to become an editor at CNN. And what I was told then, it was the fastest ever they've seen.
If you want to talk about how you went from CNN to the Braves.
Yeah. So at the end of my time with CNN, I was spending some time on a show called CNN Newsroom, which was a show for kids, for schools. You know, the teachers would record it at like 5 a.m. We'd tape it at midnight. They record it at 5 a.m. But doing that kind of show really got me away from just editing news, but got me into a creative mind of editing now. You know, I was working with CMX. I was editing music. I was doing opens, you know, end packages for the show. And we're doing it away for kids. So it was kind of like, get flashy with it, go crazy. And it was kind of like, here's a bit of tape spill, have fun. Maybe here's a script, here's not. So it got me thinking more as a producer in a creative sense as well. But then right around this time with Newsroom, AOL was, I believe, taken over or merging with Turner.
Right.
And there were all these rumors now about layoffs. They're going to move CNN to Atlanta, to New York City, or whatever else. And so I just started thinking more about what I wanted to do. And it just popped in me. I saw it pop up one day about this job at the Atlanta Braves. And me being a big baseball fan, I was like, absolutely. And it was this position for a video operations manager at the new stadium. And I really thought I had no business applying for it, because the requirements were like director,
right,
crew management, this and that. And I was like, I don't know. And my wife was like, just do it. Go for it.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? And I did. I went for it. I got interviewed a couple of times, and then, obviously I got the job and moved over. We started over at Fulton County Stadium right before they tore it down, and into Turner Field. And it was just really cool to be involved in like the construction phase of the control room there. So we had a control room that controlled the video boards, the LED boards, and music. And then I had an edit suite there. And so they brought me on as the operations manager, which was, I was head shooter, head editor, producer. I was the director of the broadcast. Sometimes I would TD and direct, combo for the games. Eventually we had someone else. We hired someone to really do that, because I was just really busy doing other things. I managed a 30-man game time crew, 4 or 5 camera ops, replays, CG operators, music, whatever else. And so that really expanded what I was doing. Now I was doing more, and it wasn't just editing more. Now I'm doing all this other stuff, which again, just got me going. There's so much creativity could do. We were producing TV ticket sale spots. Like we did a whole swing thing campaign right around like late 90s when swing was making a comeback kind of thing. And we were in a recording studio with the Cigar Store Indians, which is a band out of Atlanta. Right. Which was a blast doing that stuff. But
yeah,
as far as like for a sports guy like myself to be working for the Atlanta Braves, all year long, walking in on the field, hanging out with the players, traveling. Right. Well, I don't mean hanging out with the players, but I mean like doing shoots with the players and, being a part of the front office, and you get really coul perks with that.
Yeah, just chime in here. You remember Monique Simmons?
I do.
I saw her in the hallway at Turner, and someone had said she worked for the Braves. And I said, I didn't know you worked for the Braves. She's like, oh, yeah, Bill Baker was my boss over there. And I was like, Bill Baker was your boss? I was like, I didn't know he was the boss over there, because you were at Turner, you were an editor. So I just didn't realize that you were managing people. But I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Monique and a few others. There was a painter, Andrew Palm, at Turner, that wanted to change careers to something different. And, out of those 30 people, like 5 or 6 really had broadcast background. Everyone else just loved baseball. I wanted to be there. So kind of had to mentor these people, train them how to do things. We weren't paying network rates by any means. So we weren't going to get some, well-traveled, center field camera operator. But, but they were great people, and I'm still friends with a lot of them. Because I always thought I was one of them. I wasn't really their boss, Right. We all did the same thing. I just wore a tie and I didn't get overtime. So. But during that time, though, I got to rub shoulders with a lot of people in broadcast. Like Glenn Diamond, who produced the Braves games. I
worked with Glenn. He's a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be good for your broadcast here too. But that kind of got me meeting other people outside of my full-time staff job, and I started. They were asking me, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Would you like to do this or that?" So I was getting in with the other arenas as well, like Phillips Arena, and they had me doing replay for Hawks games. Or, Georgia Tech. I did a lot of work for Georgia Tech.
I remember that. I remember you were hopping around to a bunch of different places and trucks and working.
Yeah. So I was TDing, directing, usually smaller shows. And it also gave me this, like I was saying before, every few years, I'm like, what am I going to do different? Then I started thinking about, what? I'm pretty good at this TD thing. Let's give it a try. Let's bump it up. And then out of nowhere, someone calls me and says, hey, we have this Fox Sports South Furman football game and we need a TD. Are you interested? And a bunch of the crew are like people I knew from Atlanta anyway. I said, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. And went down there, brand new truck, had no idea what the switcher was. Oh, there was no director. They said, oh, by the way, we needed a combo TD and direct.
Oh, by the way.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it wasn't even about rate. I was like, oh my God. Okay, what could go wrong? And honestly,
well, it's usually just for the people who don't know. It's usually two different positions.
Yeah, especially for a broadcast like that, a live sports game.
Yeah,
at least 8
it's a
cameras
lot to deal with at once.
Yes, and for a direct or TD not to work with that particular switch before, it's really hard.
Yeah,
if I had any heads up, I would have at least researched it online or something and tried to figure it out. But it didn't even start well. I mean, I think I went to black like 6 times. And when it was all over, I was giving a couple people a ride. I drove a few people from Atlanta down there or up there. Right. And after the game, I said, "Hey, do you guys mind getting a ride with someone else? I need to be alone."
I need a minute.
And that 2-hour drive back to Atlanta made me think about it. It's like, you know what? Yeah, I tried. This is not my thing. And ironically, that week after, I got a call from a woman at CBS asking they need a TD for like a Wisconsin football game. It's like on a Tuesday, and they must have gone down that list of TDs available and finally found me on the bottom. And I was like, no, I'm good. It's funny because what if that Furman game was awesome? That was a lot of fun. Yeah. That might have been the route I went. I might have left Turner or whatever route, never gone there.
Yeah, you might have went that route for sure.
Yeah, which is not a bad route. I mean, it's a good career.
Right. Do you remember Steve Daly?
I do remember Steve.
Okay, because he ended up directing Inside, and he left Turner also. But you directing Inside for a year, and now he's at Fox Sports, and he is actually doing, I guess for budgetary reasons or whatever, he's doing TD and directing. And then I also talked to Dan Crossway, who does just TD, and it sounds very involved just to do technical directing. And so he doesn't mess with the directing at all. But the way he talks about it, he was an engineer and he played piano and all these things helped him, like, because there's a million buttons.
With the multitasking, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of multitasking. So it's a very hard thing to do technically.
I mean, you got to be able to find your way around a switcher without even looking also. So your hands are over here doing
That's
this.
What he said. He said he could actually move around without looking.
And nowadays, like the early days of Grass Valley switchers, it was just punching, sources, decks, or whatever else. I mean, they do so much now. I mean, you're controlling machines, you're doing this and that. It's just, and to combo any kind of broadcast with more than like 8 feeds, and that includes replays, everything else, it's just crazy. It's just, especially live events where you're looking around for shots. Scripted, I think it gets more, news where we can handle it. But
Right. Okay, so how do you get into Turner Studios?
So it's the funny thing is, I guess after about 6 years or so, at the Braves, we started getting tapes from Turner, from TBS Sports, from Braves games. Like we wanted to use their opens for their games, and we're going to throw it on the video board. And I remember watching these, thinking, "Wow, these are really good. Yeah, they're really good for." And I remember thinking then also, it's like they're really good for running one time. The amount of time it goes, and obviously I would find out later how much effort went into them. And so I started looking into it, and I asked around about Turner Studios, and then finally there was an editor 1 position open, and sent in my resume to Dan Daub. Remember Dan? And I didn't hear anything for a while. And then I finally got a phone call, had a good interview, had 2 interviews, and then heard nothing. And at this point, Braves and Turner Studios and all that, they were owned by the same people. Right. And I heard nothing. And I was just, that's a bummer. And so the next year, early in the season, I'm walking in on the warning track of the baseball field like I used to do, and it's just such a nice, really feeling. And I'm walking up the seats to my studio, and I stand in front of the dugout, and I'm thinking, you know what, Turner, I'm going to send them an email real quick because it's been a while. Get up to my studio, I send them an email. Within 30 seconds, reply back, "Hey, we were just talking about you." And it's just like, wow, that's amazing. And we start talking more and more, and they said, well, we wanted to bring you in last season, but some other people said we should wait because it's just a lot going on at Turner Field and this and that. And I was, honestly, I was kind of pissed off. But in hindsight,
because it was the same management, right? Yeah, okay.
Right. And it was, we were upgrading Turner Field to HD, the new video boards and everything else. And at this point, I mean, I put a lot of my life on hold for certain things because of the baseball schedule, because it can be really long years. I mean, my Deidre and my wife's Deidre, our wedding had to be scheduled in a certain place because of the baseball season, that kind of thing. Oh, wow. And at this point, I was like, you know what? I got to look out for me. I want to do this. I'm sorry it's not the right time, but this is what I want to do. It's my next step. Yeah. And, it worked out eventually. Got into Turner, and like most of the editors get there, you start off editing like Turner South or Cartoon Network, doing promos. And, I think I was getting booked like 40-50% of the time, which, was okay. And, but I knew I wanted to get back to those opens I was getting at the Braves. And so I went downstairs and met Craig Berry. I think it was the VP creative director, Turner Sports.
Yeah.
And I introduced myself. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're the," because I reached out to him also before saying, "I love your stuff." And then he's like, "Oh, hey, we need an editor next week. Are you booked?" I say, "Well, I don't know. You have to talk to the booking people, of course." And I got booked down there with Matt Mosteller. I remember he was the first person I worked with. And then from that day on, it was like I went to like 110% booking. I mean, I couldn't get time off.
Yeah.
Which is okay because it's good money. But we were doing really cool things too. It's just like we were doing a lot of high end opens and teases and topicals and you look at like the NBA All-Star game, the amount of money, the budget that CSSU had to be creative with these opens was amazing.
Right.
Pharrell, whoever else, Bon Jovi and one thing.
Yep.
I worked on that project for a while, and but it was worth the time that was putting into it, and and also pushed me to a different level as far as editing that I never knew I could do. The speed of editing, getting stuff done for deadlines, and then also doing a little more After Effects, the M pages, some graphics, whatever. And the thing with After Effects, though, is like I learned so much from watching this guy, Matt Lucas. You remember Matt?
Yeah.
He was amazing. At After Effects. And I would watch him do something that would, it would take him 2 hours. It would take me 3 days to do. Yeah. And it just, and it blew me away. And I kind of, I don't think he knew this at all, but I kind of saw him as a little mentor. I'd watch him and reverse engineer some of his projects, whatever, to see if I could do that. And, but between the way Turner was a great company, still is, very family friendly and all that. Got to work with some really good producers, Drew Watkins, Craig Murray, a bunch of those guys, just some really good stuff and long NBA playoffs. But then as those years are going on, I was actually getting tired. It was a workload.
Yeah, you get burnt out.
Yeah, it really was. And, eventually I asked, it was hard to do, but I asked this, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't really want to do a lot for CSSU anymore. Can I go back upstairs and do the, Turner South stuff or whatever with the broadcasting? And they were cool with it. And it was good for me. They ended up bringing me down there a little bit. They started editing stuff on the road for NASCAR.com.
Right. I remember that. You went on the road with them.
Yeah. So I'd go on the road. A few other editors, CSSU editors, go on the road too. And I was doing that a bit too. And then the funny thing that happened was I've been talking to my wife for a while about moving back up to the Boston area. Right. At this point, we have 2 kids. Okay. Sorry, back up a little bit there. They're little. It's 2008, I believe it is. Yeah. And my oldest is 4 years old. The other one's 2. And my wife and I are sitting on the back deck drinking a couple of margaritas. And she looked at me and says, "Do you really want to move north? Move?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Let's do it." "Well, we don't have jobs. Let's do it. I don't care. Let's do it." Both of us like, "Let's do it." And so we're like, all right, we felt good about it. It wasn't like oh no, we're not going to make it kind of thing. It was, yeah, let's go. We're going to make it. And I went in, I told my bosses, and then I ran in. I have no clients moving to Boston. I really had no business moving to Boston without clients.
Didn't you have like a little NASCAR? Couldn't you go out on the NASCAR or no?
Well, no, that was it. That was actually my first client. So it kind of carried over from Turner Studios. So okay. I ran into Craig Berry in the stairs and I said, "Hey, Craig, a CB. Hey, Bill." He said, "I heard you leave." And I said, "Hey, I got a proposition for you. I know you hate losing editors during the NBA playoffs. So how about this? I'm leaving. So why don't I do the .com trips so you don't lose an editor?" He says, "I love it. Just don't rip me off." And that's how it worked out. So it started and we communicated. And so when I left end of June in 2008, I continued on with Turner, just more of a freelance role. Right. And doing a lot of races. And a year or so later, .com went to NASCAR, and I was doing like 25 plus races a year.
Wow. And can you just, sorry to interrupt, can you talk a little bit about what it's like to be editing on location? It's very different than editing in an edit room. Yeah.
Definitely has its pluses and minuses working on location. It's, traveling and all that stuff is good, but you're really involved, or at least I was really involved with the whole production process. So when we're doing NASCAR, we're shooting features with, Dale Earnhardt Jr. or whoever. And
were you out on the road with Crossweight and Henderson, or was that before that?
that was before that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was on the road. This guy, Jason Allison from our shooters, Turner had this like horse trailer, a little production suite in it.
Mm-hmm.
Bree Smith or Bree Johnson at the time was our production coordinator. Matt Marcello, producer. And we had Ricky Rackman as our talent. As a kid, I used to watch him on MTV all the time. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh my God, Ricky. I wouldn't say we're friends, but we're acquaintances. We text each other every so often. But great. I loved having him on. He loved racing and all that stuff. So as a crew, we would be really creative with what we could do. There really wasn't a lot we couldn't do out there with .com. And so we'd go out and like interview fans. You know how NASCAR fans can be pretty funny. We'd interview fans, whatever else. And the process would be, I'd either be out in the field with them if I wanted to get some sun, or I'm just waiting back on the truck. And they'll come back with cards, no tapes at this point, cards, and they would dump the material, and then they would actually just leave me alone, which is actually a really good relationship. I like working with producers, but all my clients, even now, most of them know that I'm good by myself.
Yeah.
I can, the reason why I call myself a producer editor right now, not a predator, is that I'm a producer and editor, so I can produce in the box.
Right.
And a bunch of the clients I have now hire me because I can do that.
Right.
It kind of saves them a little money too.
Sure.
But, so I put together these pieces, choose the music, edit the music. And then within a few hours or a day, depending on the piece, I'd have a piece, we'd export it, upload it to NASCAR.com or online somewhere else. And that's it, but it's a bear, you got TV compound food you eat, which can be really good or really bad, depending where you are. Traveling, it gets tough after a while, especially when you have kids. I know some people out there, this guy Angel, who's a camera op, he was everywhere and he had a family. He was just, I don't know how he did it. I know it's a good relationship, I'm sure he had, but phenomenal shooter. But he was everywhere.
Some people, it's just like one of the, the husband or the wife, they just travel all the time. The other one stays home, deals with the school, and it works for them. I couldn't do that. I wanted to be at my kids' games. I ended up doing that, Sean. I after a number of years of traveling so much, I backed off. Mm-hmm. A couple things happened. One, they backed off, and then I backed off as far as how much they wanted to shoot. And then I got into coaching soccer. Nice.
My older daughter, and I've been coaching still. I coach high school soccer, which is great. And my older daughter's she's going to college next year, hopefully in the fall, to play soccer. Well, going to college to learn, but also to play soccer.
Right.
Actually at my alma mater in Keene State. Mm-hmm. But going back with the .com, that kind of environment is great for learning to do things without being puppeted to do it. There's one thing, you'll be given a script and you say, these are the cuts I want. Which to me is not fun. Yeah. Not a fun job. Or here's the bin of taste, or here's the material. Can you turn, chicken shit into chicken salad? That kind of thing.
So much better. I remember after you left, I did work with CSSU a little bit, a lot with NBA TV, but then I ended up working with NBA.com. And for 2 or 3 years, all I did was features. And I did have a producer in the room. Sometimes they'd be on the road. But it was a lot like that where I was just sort of left to my own devices, at least to put a rough cut together and then I make changes after that. It's just a lot more fun doing it that way than every frame and every dissolve. So you have your own company now. It's called Baker Street Post. Mm-hmm. And what are you doing with that? What are you doing now? You're Liberty Mutual, I saw on LinkedIn, what, some other stuff?
Yeah. So Baker Street Post, I do a lot of work via as Bill Baker or Baker Street Post, depending on the client. Mm-hmm. I'm still doing the work in sports when I can. But I have some really good corporate clients as well. Liberty Mutual, Amica, I know, 2 insurance companies. Done some work with Gowdy Productions. They do outdoor network type shows, like fishing shows, hunting shows. Okay. Early on when I first moved up here, I actually went out in the field and did some shooting and all that as well. He wanted the shooter to also be the editor. Right. So basically, you want to be there and tell him the story, and it saves money. But yeah, so not just editing. It's like as the years have gone on, you have to tailor what you do or who you do in order to stay alive. You have to update all the time. So nowadays, oddly enough, about 40% of my work is editing. 45, let's say. Wow. About 6% is motion graphics work now. A lot of After Effects.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I've done broadcast packages for NASCAR International. Just basic animating logos or whatever else. And it's a really fun way to stay creative. I'm still staying editing, so I'm keeping that fresh, but it's just really starting to dabble into the 3D side of things, which, I'm not talking, Maya 4D and like that. I mean, just regular 3D and just some really cool motion graphics. So that's keeping me busy. And I think that's really important for anybody in the field to be able to, widen what you do. Again, if you're just an editor or just a shooter, it's going to be harder to be hired.
Yeah.
If you can do multiple,
they want you to do everything now for sure. So soup to nuts. Can you wrap it up with some advice that you would give to people? I mean, it seems like you're going to say, try everything, but I don't know if you have something else you want to say, because you do a lot of different things, Bill.
Yeah. I think the number one thing, well, let's say two things I think are pretty important. Obviously, paying your dues. I think broadcasts, journalism, whatever else, I think it's very unique as far as paying your dues. I think every industry you have to pay your dues, but it's very, very important in this industry. And it's a long time. It's not the first 2 years in the career. It's a good 20 years or whatever.
Right.
You pay your dues for a long time, and it will pay off. I do pretty well right now as far as finances, that kind of thing go. When I first started, I made $17,000 a year at CNN. 17.5. Sorry, I don't want to short myself. But you work hard and work hard and work hard, and you keep learning and all that stuff. And just paying those dues is so important. And don't be afraid to say yes to a project. Take it on. I don't think I'd be where I am now if I listened to myself and didn't take that Braves job. It's
right.
Listen to the loved ones about what you think you should do, and also listen to your heart. That whole Furman football game thing was great. It was great. It was an experience I still talk about, but it also made me realize, okay, I definitely editing whatever else is the way I want to go.
Absolutely. And let me just chime in here. I definitely, you remember Chris Cover.
Yep.
I spent 2 years in his room watching him and learning Flame, and it just wasn't for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it took me a while to figure that out. And I said, I'm going to try this. I'm going to go through all the tutorials and watch him and try some projects. But After Effects and Premiere and Avid, it all makes sense to me. Whereas the node-based stuff and Flame and Nuke and all, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. I know. For me.
It's a different linear ship. I want to say it's just, yeah. And, the other thing, Sean, I think what's even more, just as important as the dues is relationships.
Oh yeah.
Really, be careful about bridges you might burn, whatever. But, being smart, being friendly with people, learning from them, like I said, getting to know people. There's so much in my life now that I look back, even talking to you now, I look back and a lot of the work I get now, it's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
The reason I got into Liberty to do work for them is because an old college friend was working there and they needed someone to train their editors on Avid. So I came in and they kept me on doing things. The relationships I kept with Turner Studios, all of them there, I still hear from them, or I get a phone call. Hey, Bill, are you available to do some stuff for the NBA here and here? Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
If I was just a complete dick or didn't produce a quality product for them, or they felt like I mailed it in, are they going to call me? No, they're not going to call you. So you just got to give the effort.
But I do remember that story that you and Deidre decided to just leave without jobs, and that was pretty brave, dude. To do
it
that.
Really was.
But I've heard that a few times from people. Like, I had no money, I had no connections. I just moved to LA, and now they're working on that 70s show or The Walking Dead or something. So. Yeah,
I think it gives those people a reason to not sit back and really go for it. You have to, I can't move and then just sit around and wait. No, you're going to start reaching out to people.
You gotta go for it sometimes in life.
Yeah.
All right, Bill, this has been awesome. You're a great guy. It's great to talk to you. I miss hanging out with you. Hopefully someday we'll have a drink.
Yeah, I missed the car rides. Those old car rides. And,
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome talking to you, man. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, see you.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Thanks for listening to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where entertainment pros talk about how they made their dream into a career.
Subscribe to our YouTube page, like and share our Facebook page, and download at Apple and Google Podcasts. Thanks to Bob Juergens for the Rockin' VO and Joseph McDade for the music. Wow, next week's guest is a big one. It's Art David. He is a visual effects supervisor. He's worked on The Matrix, Die Hard 3, so many great movies. He's a great guy. It's a great conversation. So much fun. See you next week.